Peppermint Patty group. We are here for another guided reading lesson, and I'm so glad that you're here with me. So we're going to read a very fiction book today. We know it's fiction because it's got some really strange characters in it. So you'll get to see that in just a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to do some more word work. So this week we're going to do an analogy chart. So we're going to look at those words and we're going to try to see what sound or what hunk and chunk we hear in those words. And then we're going to talk about a new strategy, and then we're going to read a book. And our book is going to be called Space Monsters Birthday Party. So you can already imagine what it's going to be like when we know one of the characters is a space monster. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure that we have this analogy chart ready to go. So go ahead and make those two lines to look like a T. And then on one side, you're gonna write the word rain. And then on the other side, you're gonna write the word cool. And then make sure to underline the letters that I have underlined. And that's really important because those are the hunks and chunks that we're gonna listen for and work with when we do our analogy chart today. So go ahead and make sure you have this ready. And then when you're ready, you can press the play button and we'll get started. Okay, so let's do our analogy chart. So remember, I'm going to give you a word and I'll put it in a sentence to make sure that you really understand what the word is and know exactly what I'm talking about. And then what we're going to do is we're going to stretch it out and see if we can hear which sound we hear in that word. So before we actually go to our words, let's talk about the hunks and chunks and the different sounds that we're going to work with today. So the first one is that AI hunk and chunk. And we actually haven't learned this hunk and chunk yet, but you guys are gonna be the first ones to learn it. So I'm gonna teach it to you today. So this is how the AI hunk and chunk goes. So I'll do it once and then we'll do it again so you can do it with me the second time, okay? It's really easy. It goes, rain, rain, you're a pain. AI, A. That's it. It's really easy. And we're making this movement with our hands because we're showing that it's making that long and strong A sound, just like we do when we're doing the alphabet. So see if you can do it with me this time. You ready? Rain, rain, you're a pain. A. Very good. All right. And then our other one that we're going to work with is that O hunk and chunk. And we just learned this one last week. It's like 2 weeks ago. We learned it in like the word school, or in this word, the word cool. So remember, this O hunk and chunk makes the oo sound. Now there's two. The other O can make that sound, like ook. But this one is going to make that oo sound, okay? So let's do that one together. And you all know this one, so we'll just do it one time. You ready? Oh, ooh, I love school. Good job. So both are pretty easy and pretty quick to remember. All right, so now that we've gone over the different hunks and chunks that we're going to work with and the sounds that they make, let's actually look at those words and see if we can figure out what sound we hear in those words, okay? All right, so the first word is train. So like I saw the train go by really fast on the tracks. So everybody say train. Good. All right, so let's see if we can figure out what sound we hear. So think about that. What sound do you hear in the middle of train? Do you hear the A sound, or do you hear the O sound? Good, we hear that A sound. So we know that we're gonna have that AI hunk and chunk in our word. Now the beginning is a little tricky because the way we say it, it kind of sounds like the CH sound, train. It sounds like that ch sound, but it's not the ch sound. It's just, if we say it really fast, it kind of sounds like that. But if I really stretched it out, it would be like this, terrain. So it's like you hear that tur. So what two letters do you think we're going to blend together at the beginning of that word? TR. Very good. And that's really tricky because it does sound like that ch sound, but it's not the CH, it's TR. So let's see. Terrain. We hear that AI hunk and chunk next. Very good. And I'm going to make sure that I underline it so I know that that's my hunk and chunk that makes that A sound. So the I is silent. We don't say the I. And then what sound do we hear at the end? Train. That N sound. Very good. So go ahead and make sure you have that. And make sure it's under that word rain because we want all of these words to have that same hunk and chunk in it, that same pattern. Very good. All right, let's do our next word. Our next word is fool. Fool. Like I was a fool to think that it was gonna rain today. Fool. That means like I was so silly to think something. So everybody say fool. Good. All right, so think about it. What sound do you hear in the middle of fool? Good. Hopefully you said that O-O-oo sound. So let's stretch it out and we're going to write it under cool because it has that same hunk and chunk in it. So what sound do we hear first? The F sound. Good. I'm so glad you said that. Then when we stretch it out, we hear f-ool. So what hunk and chunk do you hear after that f sound? F-ool. Good. The O-O sound. Hopefully that is what you said. And we're going to underline it so we know that's our hunk and chunk and it's going to make that oo sound. Then what do we hear at the end? F-ool. The L sound. Very good, you guys. All right. So we have our word fool and our word train. Let's see what our next word is. So our next word is stool. Stool. Like I sat on the stool and got something to eat. So everybody say stool. Good. All right, so what hunk and chunk do you hear? Do you hear the A-I-A sound or do you hear the O-O-oo sound? What do you think? Stool. Good. Hopefully you said that ooh, that O-O-oo sound. So let's stretch that out and we're going to write it right under our other words that have that same hunk and chunk in it. Now I hear at the beginning, I hear two letters that when I blend them together, they make that st sound. So what two letters do you think make that st sound? Good. Hopefully you said S and T. So we're going to take that S and that T and we're going to blend them together. I'm not going to go st. I'm not going to separate them. I want to blend them. So I say st. Good. Then what do we hear? Stool. We hear our hunk and chunk. Good. So we're going to add that O-O and I'm going to make sure to underline it so I know that it's that hunk and chunk. Then what do we hear at the end of that word? Stool. We hear the L sound again, just like in fool and in cool. Very good. So actually, these all rhyme so far, don't they? And even these two rhyme. They end in that ain sound. All right. So let's look at another word. Our next word is faith. Faith. Like my faith is really important to me, like what I believe in. So everybody say faith. Good. All right, so think about it. What sound do you hear in the word faith? Do you hear that A-I-A sound or do you hear the O-O-oo sound? Good. Hopefully you hear that A-I-A sound. So let's stretch that word out. So what sound do we hear first in the word faith? Good. Hopefully you said that F sound. Then what do we hear after that F sound? Faith. We hear that hunk and chunk, the A-I. Very good. And then I'm going to underline it to make sure I know that's my hunk and chunk in the word. So faith. Wait a second. Faith. I hear another hunk and chunk. What hunk and chunk do you guys hear? Yes, hopefully you said that TH. Remember, we've learned that one. So we hear that TH hunk and chunk. Now, we're not going to worry about underlining it because that's not the hunk and chunk and sound that we're working with, but it's still helpful to know and to remember when we're stretching out those words. It's the whole reason that we're using these hunks and chunks and learning them. So good job. All right, let's do our next word. Our next word is painter. painter. So it's a little bit of a longer word, so we're going to stretch it out. But think about, what sound do you hear in painter? Do you hear the A-I-A sound, or do you hear the O-O-U sound? Good. You hear the A-I-A sound. So let's get started. It's a longer word, but we can do it. So let's stretch that out. What sound do we hear first in painter? Painter. The P sound. Good. I hope that's what you said. Then what do we hear after the P sound? Painter. We hear that A-I hunk and chunk. Very good. And we're going to underline it so we know that's our hunk and chunk. Then what do we hear after the A sound? We hear ain. What do we hear? That N. Very good. Then we hear paint. Painter. What do we hear after the N? A T. Very good. And then this last part, this is a hunk and chunk that we have not learned yet, but we will learn it eventually with the whole class. So I'll teach it to you really quick. It's really easy. All it is, it goes E-R-R, E-R-R at the end of a word. E-R-R, E-R-R at the end of a word. So listen again. Paint-er. What two letters? E-R-R. Very good. So just like our phonics stance tells us, E-R-R at the end of a word, just like in paint-er. And we're not going to underline that because that's not our hunk and chunk, but that is a good hunk and chunk to remember, okay? All right, good job. We have one more word. So remember that ER hunk and chunk because you might need it for this next one. So our next word, our last word is scooter. Scooter. So everybody say scooter. Good. All right, so let's think about, what sound do you hear in the middle of that word scooter? What do you hear? The O-O-U sound. Very good. So we're going to stretch this out. It's another longer word, but I know you can do it, okay? So let's do it together. So I hear another blend. I hear another two letters that we're going to put together at the beginning of that word that we're not going to separate the sounds. We're going to blend them together. So what two letters do you think make that sk sound? So we hear the S sound first. You're right. But there's actually two letters that can make that k sound. And there are some words that have that SK blend in it. So there are a lot of words that start with SK, and you do say sk there too. But actually in this word, it's the other letter that makes the k sound. So what letter am I thinking of? The C. Good. So it could be SK in some words, but in this word, it's SC. But both of those make that sk sound. Good job. And then what do we hear after the sk sound? Scooter. We hear that O-O hunk and chunk. Very good. And I'm going to make sure to underline that so I can see it really well in my word. Then this is a little tricky because the way we say it, it's different than how we actually would stretch it out and how we would actually like pronounce it. It's just because it's just the way that we talk. It's just a little different. We just say it a little different. So when I say scooter, it almost sounds like a D, scooter. That's what it sounds like when I say it. But if I'm really stretching it out, I'm actually going to stretch it out and say scooter. So what letter do we actually need right here? A T. Very good. And even though we kind of make the D sound when we say it, that's not how it's spelled. It's spelled with a T on the end. But actually, our word is going to have two other letters on the end because our word isn't scoot, it's scooter, right? So remember remember that hunk and chunk that we worked with right here? Well, what hunk and chunk or what two letters make that sound? Do you remember? The E-R. Let's do it. You ready? E-R-R, E-R-R at the end of a word. E-R-R, E-R-R at the end of a word. Just like in our word scooter. Very good. Awesome job, you guys. So make sure that you have all of this written and make sure you underline those hunks and chunks so that you can see those in your words. So let's go back over one more time our two hunks and chunks. You ready to do it with me? So let's see if you remember that A, I, hunk and chunk phonics dance. You remember? Let's see. Rain, rain, you're a pain. A, I, A. And then let's do that O. You ready? O, ooh. O, ooh. I love school. Good job, you guys. So here's what I want you to do. Before you move on, I want you to press the pause button and I want you to go show somebody. Show somebody at your house, a brother, a sister, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever's at your house, and go show them what you just learned and what you practiced. You can show them how you stretched out all of these words and you heard that same hunk and chunk in all of these words and then in all of these words, okay? Kind of show them what you did, all right? And then you can come back here. I'm gonna have the little take a break sign pop up. And remember, I'm not gonna pop up and tell you what to do because you know what to do. If you need to take a break, then you're gonna press pause. If you don't, just let it play. You guys did a great job with our analogy chart, and hopefully that helps you remember those two hunks and chunks just a little bit better. So good job. Let's go ahead and talk about our new strategy after you take a break. Okay, so let's talk about our new strategy. And this is actually the last strategy that we're going to talk about because you all have already talked about all of the other ones. And this is one that you all do already. I know you do this. I've read with you, I've listened to you, and I know you already do this. But I just want to make sure that we go over it so you always know that this is a great strategy to use if you get stuck on a word. So this one is called stretchy snake. And that just means that instead of just like lips the fish is where you just look at that first letter to see if you can figure it out. But stretchy snake is that kind of that next step. So that means like if you look at that first letter and it doesn't look right, it doesn't sound right, or you can't figure it out, then we want to use stretchy snake and we want to stretch out the whole word to see if we can hear all of those sounds in the word, okay? So a lot of times when you use stretchy snake, you'll also use chunky monkey because you're going to be looking for hunks and chunks in that word that you know. And so when you stretch it out, you can hear those hunks and chunks, okay? So I'm going to show you what that looks like as you're reading the book. And of course, I'm going to pop in just like I have before to kind of ask you some questions and let you think about some things and practice some things. But definitely remember that this is a great strategy to use if you do get stuck on a word. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our book. So let's read our book called Space Monsters Birthday Party. So you can already tell that what I said at the beginning of our lesson is true. Our characters are going to be a little different this time. And what I want you to be thinking about as you read the story today is thinking about all of those story elements. And that means the characters, the setting, so where and when the story takes place, and then the plot of the story. So I want you to think about what's the problem and then what's the solution. How do they solve the problem? Because when you get done reading your book, you're going to go back to Seesaw and you're going to tell me all of those things, okay? But we're going to read this book, and it's about Space Boy and Galaxy Girl. And they've been invited to Space Monster's birthday party, and they're worried about something. So we're going to find out what that is. So we're going to find out why they're worried. And I have to give you a little hint. Why they're worried might be part of the problem. So when you're thinking about what the problem is, think about why they're worried. So let's go ahead and take a look at our title page. Okay, I just wanted to really quickly mention that this page right here is called our title page. So most books, almost all books, are going to have that very first page that you flip to is going to be called your title page. So it has your title on there. It usually will have a picture in there, and a lot of times it's a picture that you'll see sometime throughout the book. Like they've taken a picture from in the book and they put it on the title page. And then you'll see the author and the illustrator's name. So I wanted you to make sure that you knew what this page was called before we started reading. So remember, this is called our title page. And so when you're reading books at home, you can see if you can find some title pages. Okay, so let's practice our stretchy snake strategy, that very last strategy that we're going to use if we get stuck on words. So I'm going to pretend to get stuck on this word right here. And I want you to watch how I stretch out the word and also use Chunky Monkey to help me figure out this word, okay? All right, so let's look. Look. Wait a second. Okay, I don't know that word, so let me think. I'm going to use stretchy snake and I'm going to use chunky monkey to see if I can find any words or hunks and chunks that I see. Let's see. Oh, wait a second. I know ACE says ace, and that's actually a hunk and chunk that we'll learn. So I already know that part, so that says ace. And then I also see at the end where it says boy. I know that word, so let me stretch it out, and when I get to the ACE, I'm going to say ace. And when I get to that last part, BOY, I'm going to say boy. So let me say, sp, ace, boy, sp, ace, boy, space, boy, space, boy. Hold on, let me see if that makes sense. Look, space, boy, Space Monster is having a birthday party on Saturday. I'm invited to his party. I'm invited too, said Space Boy. Yeah, that makes sense. And we saw that word again at the end, and both times that makes sense. And it looks like the word Space Boy. So I think I got it. So don't forget, when you're stretching out that word, also look and see if you see any hunks and chunks or words that you know hiding inside of that word. All right, so let's keep reading. All right, so after reading this page, I want to know, what do you think the problem in our story is? So pause the video if you need to, but just stop and think about it. Or if there's somebody close by, then you can tell them. But what do you think the problem in our story is? And then once you think you figured out the problem, I want you to think about, what would be the polite thing to do? So think about the problem and then think about, what would be the polite thing that you could do if you were Space Boy and Galaxy Girl. So go ahead and do that. And then whenever you're ready, press play and we'll keep reading. All right, so one thing that strong readers do is they read with expression. And we've talked a little bit about that, but we're really going to practice that on these 2 pages. So when I say read with expression, that means I don't read like a robot, because that would be really what? Boring. That would be really boring. So we want to make sure that our voice goes up and down and changes to match the character and how we think the character would sound. And if there is a question mark at the end, we want our voice to go up. If there's an exclamation point at the end, we want our voice to sound excited, and we want to read it like we would say it. So let's take a look at these 2 pages, and I'm just going to kind of show you what it would sound like if I were to read these 2 pages. So I want you to listen how I use expression and I change my voice to make it sound interesting. So just kind of listen and then I'm going to let you practice. "Come in," said Space Monster. "We are making party hats." "That sounds like fun," said Galaxy Girl. "I like making things." "After that, it will be time to eat," said Space Monster. "Oh," said Galaxy Girl and Space Boy. Now, why did I not say, "Oh"? Why did I not say it excitedly? Why did I not say it with excitement in my voice? Because they were worried about what to eat, right? That was the problem in our story. So I'm not going to sound excited because if I'm Space Boy and Galaxy Girl, well, I'm not excited about going to eat. I'm worried about it. So instead of saying, "Oh," I'm going to say, "Oh." Like I'm kind of worried and like, "Oh, what should I do?" So I want you to practice that. I even changed my voice how I thought Space Monster would sound, which was kind of a little different like this, right? Like he was like, "Oh." And Galaxy Girl, she sounded sweet to me. So I said, "That sounds like fun," said Galaxy Girl. So I want you to practice reading it how you think the characters would sound, but also I want you to practice reading it just like you would if you were saying it, okay? Remember, we don't want to sound like a robot. All right, so I know that this lesson was a little bit longer, so I really appreciate you sticking with me and doing a really great job reading our book and working with our word work that we did earlier. But I hope you enjoyed our story about Space Monster and his birthday party, because now what you're going to do is you're going to go back to Seesaw and you're going to fill in the graphic organizer to tell me the characters in the story. So remember, that's anything that shows action in the story, not just a person or an animal. A lot of times that's what a character is, but it can be anything really that shows action. You're going to tell me the setting, so where and when the story took place, and then you're going to tell me the problem and the solution. So tell me the plot of the story. So I can't wait to see what you guys show me, and you did another great job. I will meet you back here next week for another book.